Hello everyone, I'm going to finally do a Game of Thrones Episode 1 review today, and I'm going to be doing an outline review, just going over the show and making references to the books, connections, any clarifications, just stuff like that. And so if you haven't read the books and if you haven't watched the show, it's your choice right now to choose whether or not you want to continue watching this. So consider yourself fairly warned. I am not going to sit here and do spoiler alerts every time something comes up. The whole thing is just going to be one big spoiler, so your choice. Anyways, we start off with Game of Thrones Beyond the Wall. You see that the wall is this big, huge, from coast to coast thing made out of ice. And these people called the Night's Watch man it, and so you see three brothers of the Night's Watch going beyond the wall and looking for wildlings. One scout goes off and sees a bunch of massacred bodies and goes back and reports, and the leader wants to go back and see where they went, and they were gone. So next thing you see, they get attacked by these weird creepy things with glowing blue eyes. Those are the others. Those are the White Walkers that you're going to be hearing mentioned all throughout the books. So others, White Walkers, kind of same thing. What I liked about the scene was it was kind of cut to the point. You were introduced to White Walkers, you were introduced to a little bit of the Night's Watch, you saw the wall. If anything, this is probably the most confusing for people who haven't read. So because they don't give you much about what the Night's Watch is. So the introduction credits were next, and they were awesome. They had the gears going on, the cities rising up out of the map, and this is very steampunkish to me, and the song even reminded me of Arcanum, so I was pretty pleased with the opening credits. Next you were introduced to the Stark family, and these are one of the main houses, probably the main characters as well. You're introduced to Ned and Catelyn Stark. They're very family-oriented. They love their children. And you see right off the bat that they take the time to watch their children out of their busy lives. They watch the children and they joke around, and you just see what they do. You're introduced to Bran, who is doing his target practice. And you see just a little boy who loves to climb. And you're introduced to Jon Snow, the bastard son. He is very shunned by Catelyn, as you see the very cold look she gives him. You're introduced to Robb Stark, who is the eldest, and he is of an age of Jon, but he's the oldest Stark, and he's learning how to be a lord, mature and stuff. You see Sansa, who is trying so hard to be a lady, and she's very good at it. She is good at everything that's ladylike. She's very beautiful. She likes to sew. She's just good at being ladylike. The only thing is she believes in fairy tales and knights in shining armor, princes coming to save her and climbing through her window, and happily ever after. And then you're introduced to Arya, who's just a tomboyish. She likes to cause trouble, but she doesn't mean any harm by it. Next, you're seeing the beheading of the deserter. This is the only one left of the Night's Watch that was looking for the wildlings. One of the only remaining person who saw the White Walkers. So the secret dies with him. Nobody believes him. They think he's just a madman, or he's trying to make an excuse as to why he deserted. Next, after that, you're introduced to the finding of the wolves. And the wolves are my favorite. They're so cute. They're going to be important to the storyline. Otherwise, they just wouldn't be mentioned. The scene where you see the dead direwolf and the dead stag was pretty gruesome. I had a hard time watching that. It was so gross. So you find out there just so happens to be a wolf for each of the Stark children, including Jon Snow. Even though he's a Snow, he has Stark blood, and he gets a white wolf, so it kind of makes sense. He's an outcast. He gets the albino of the bunch, the little runt. And so there's a lot of symbolism going here. Each of the Stark children gets a wolf, and if you didn't tell, they didn't mention it, there was a stag antler inside the Direwolves' neck, and I'm going to just throw this out here. The sigil of House Stark is a direwolf, and the sigil of House Baratheon is a stag, so if you look, symbolism there. Makes sense to me. Some foreshadowing there. Next you see a quick intro of Cersei and Jaime. They're twins, and they are very beautiful people, and you see them in this little funeral procession or something going on, and that is Jon Arryn on the table, and they're talking about him, and obviously he knew something they did not want to get out, and they're scared that he told someone, but they don't think he did. So you get a little quick mystery starting here that, you know, there's something going on between them that nobody knows about. And then after that, you are seeing Ned cleaning the sword in the God's Wood. And I like how they mentioned that Catelyn doesn't feel welcome there, because you gain a little bit more about the North, that the North is a very old traditional place, and people who aren't of the North don't feel welcome because the North is so old and set in its ways. And I thought that was a quick little thing that people should have took note of, is how old the North is and how unwelcome it makes outsiders feel. And then you are given the fact that Robert's coming and that Jon Arryn died, and you see that Jon Arryn was like a father to Ned, and Rob was like a brother to Ned. Robert was a brother to Ned. I don't get confused with his son Rob. And next you were given Robert's arrival, and it was a very fun scene. Robert and Ned Stark get reconciled, and there's just a nice quick little scene. You could tell the brotherly love that they had. But the first thing that jumped onto me was the Hound's helm. The Hound is like my favorite character after Tyrion, and so I was just amazed. I was like, they did him right. They did. Hound is fantastic. When you see that Robert wants to pay his respects in the crypts, Cersei just gets on his butt. She obviously does not want him going down there, and so that starts out like a quick scene. Like, why wouldn't you want him to go down there? So that was kind of interesting. You feel the tension between House Lannister and House Stark from the very start. That's very important as well. And while down there, Robert asks Ned to be the Hand of the King. And the Hand of the King is, just the king's right-hand man, his go-to guy. And Ned feels like he has no choice but to accept, but he's going to go and talk to his wife about it and stuff first. Plus, Robert wants Sansa to marry Joffrey, and you could tell that House Lannister and House Stark are not going to like that. So, we'll see what happens there. Next, Tyrion, my absolute favorite character, is introduced, and he is perfect. I did not like him being introduced in a whorehouse, but he is a man of big appetites. So, that was very interesting to see him like that. And what I liked about this scene is, even though he's in a whorehouse and he's drinking and all that, you still see his clever side. He's still quick of tongue, and he is very fantastic, executed perfectly. Back in the crypt, you see that Robert is paying his respects to a woman called Lyanna, who was Ned's sister. And you could tell that's probably why Cersei did not want him going down there. Lyanna was supposed to be Robert's true love, and she died because of the Targaryens. So you see that, and you learn that the Targaryens were the royal house before King Robert was. And so this is a very touching moment where you see the hurt in Robert and Ned, and it's kind of important to the story. Next, you're introduced to all the way across the sea to Daenerys and Viserys Targaryen. I'm having trouble with these names. And Dany, you see right off the bat that she's very inquisitive, she's very smart, she's just being held back by the abuse of her older brother. And you see this right away when she asks, why is this guy Irilio letting us stay in his house for free? He's not asking anything for us. And you can tell by what Viserys says that he's just, blinded by his hunger to go back home. Whereas Daenerys is kind of more cautious and, more smart. And so they mention why Khal Drogo is being introduced to Daenerys. Viserys wants the Khalasar that Drogo has, and it's made out of many men. If he just get across the sea, then he has an army basically, and he could win back his throne by force. But you know, you could tell Khal Drogo and Viserys have two different cultures. So I know somebody was confused as to why she's married a horse lord, but I thought they explained it pretty clearly why there's this marriage going on between a royal and a horse lord. I liked when Daenerys went into the bath, that it was very hot, and the servant woman said, "Hey, lady, it's too hot," but Daenerys seemed not to feel it, and I thought that was very important because they're from the House Dragon, and heat shouldn't affect them, so it's kind of probably like a magical element to their blood, which is pretty awesome. You see how submissive Dany is to her brother, and how sometimes she does like prod at him with some information, but you could tell that it's, even though she's trying to get some logic into his brain, she's cowers before him, and I thought the relationship between them was absolutely perfect. If you read the books and then you see this relationship, it was great. Daenerys is being played by a wonderful actress. She has her down to a T. And Viserys is just as great. Next you see this cute little scene where Sansa, all she wants is to marry Joffrey. She thinks he's so handsome and he's such a great guy, and I thought that scene was cute because it shows how lovesick Sansa is and how blind she is. And sorry, but Sansa is probably one of my most hated characters besides Catelyn Stark. So yeah, I don't like her. After that, you're given another one of my favorite scenes, where Tyrion and Jon Snow have a scene together where they're explaining why Jon Snow shouldn't be offended at being a bastard, because that's exactly what he is. And so, you know, Tyrion's just trying to give him some friendly advice, and it sounds like he's being mean because he keeps calling Jon Snow bastard, but he's really just doing him a favor because no one's going to forget that Jon Snow is a bastard, so he shouldn't forget it or act like he isn't one. So one of my favorite scenes, I love, just before this, you were introduced to Benjen Stark, and I love Benjen. Even though he's not in the books very often, he is a very great character. Like, you can tell he's a loving uncle. And next you are given a Benjen and Ned scene where he's pretty much saying, like, who knows what's happening behind the wall. Ned's like, you know, we haven't seen others don't exist, and Benjen's like, who knows, you know. So that added some more intrigue, like, you know. So next we are given a Cat and Cersei scene, and Cat and Cersei are talking about being grandparents and how Joff and Sansa should wed each other, or how they're gonna wed each other. And so you could see Cersei is doing some, like, saying some undertones of very mean things. First, the number one thing she said that stuck out to me that was like total slight to Catelyn was, such a beauty shouldn't stay hidden here forever. And she's basically talking to Catelyn Stark. And from the books, you can't really tell from the show, Catelyn Stark was a very beautiful woman. Everyone mentions how beautiful Catelyn Stark is and how Sansa looks exactly like her when she was younger. So she was pretty much saying, haha, you're stuck up here, I'm such a beauty, shouldn't be stuck up here. So that was kind of like a little snub to Catelyn. Ned and Jaime have a little, like, battle of words, and so that was more tension. You could tell that Ned and Jaime definitely don't like each other. And then you're given an Arya and Sansa scene where Arya throws stuff at Sansa, and it's just absolutely adorable. You can tell she doesn't hate her sister, but she wants her sister to, like, lighten up a little bit, and so it's just great, their little relationship. It's just like most little sister and sister relationship. After the feast, Ned and Catelyn find out that the Lannisters supposedly killed Jon Arryn. They find this out through Catelyn's sister, Lysa, and she is all the way up in the Eyrie, which is like a castle in the mountains. So now Ned Stark is stuck between should he stay here with his family and protect his family, or should he do the other honorable thing, which is to protect his king and his brother, basically. So as a friend and as a subject, he feels obligated to go down south and protect the king. So after this, you're given Daenerys' wedding, and you're given a glimpse into Drogo's world and his Khalasar and how the Horse Lords do their thing. And Jorah Mormont was introduced, and he's another one of my favorites. He was played, from what I've seen in a small little scene, he's really great. He's really great at playing his part, and I loved it. He's going to be our Daenerys and Viserys key to what it's like in Westeros. And then they introduced dragon eggs. They're not as beautiful as described in the books. In the books they're described as swirly and shiny, but now here they just look like stone, which is, I think, better to do than to make them look all beautiful, because if they just look like stone, no one's going to expect them to hatch. So I think choosing them to look more plain was actually a smart thing to do. And it's very symbolic here. When Drogo gives Daenerys her horse, but they didn't make it seem like that in the show, which that kind of made me mad, because when Drogo is giving her a horse, horses are like the most revered things in a Khalasar, and when Dany rides the horse, it shows that she's ready to be part of the Khalasar. She knows how to ride. That means she's going to know how to be a Khaleesi, and so that kind of made me mad that it wasn't as symbolic as it was in the books. And their first night together wasn't as gentle either. Their first night together was actually kind of romantic. When he takes off her clothes, he takes it off gently, and when he asks her no, he's asking her no, like, do you want to wait? He's not just saying no for no reason. He's asking her, like, no, do you want to wait? And in the book she says yes. She's ready to go on with it. She's ready to, be one with him. And in here in the books, it doesn't do that. He just takes her, like, not against her will because they're married, but, he doesn't ask her opinion or anything. And it wasn't like that in the books. In the books, she was willing to be his wife, and she was submitting to him in that scene. And here, she kind of wasn't. She was just kind of being forced to submit. So next, they have Bran's climb, and this is the ending scene. Bran's climbing the walls of the castle like he always does, and he sees Cersei and Jaime are not just being brother and sister. They are out wrestling in the castle tower, and so Cersei and Jaime see him, and so Cersei's like, oh my god, he sees us, and so Jaime goes up, picks him up, and it just it ends with the most renowned scene from A Song of Ice and Fire. The things I do for love. Bam! Just pushes Bran out of the wall. And that was a great ending. So, A Song of Ice and Fire was a better choice to read the books than to see the... Sorry, let me start this over. A Game of Thrones is just a great show. This episode 1 was just fantastic. A Song of Ice and Fire is a great book series, and I think the show is being quite true to the book series, and so it was just, I think, was fantastic. And of course the books are going to be like an 11 out of 10, but the TV show is actually like 9 out of 10. The books are always going to be better. That's just how things work. But I honestly can say I'm quite pleased with the show. I don't think it could have been done any better. There were times where I think like quotes from the book would have been better than the quotes they used, but other than that, I think they did it perfectly, because it's not as easy as writing a book. When you're writing a book, you get inside the character's mind. You get to see what they're thinking. With a book, you're given you could be given pages of description. In a show, you have to kind of, have everything said You know, when describing the Night's Watch, they can't just have a character's mind think of the Night's Watch. They have to say it through others' dialogue, and just it's harder to do it in a show. And I think for a show, they actually did pretty great. So sorry for any stalling I had earlier. So that was my review. Bye.